This is the Ecommerce Braintrust, a podcast about building momentum online for established consumer brands. Join our hosts and their expert guests for high-level conversations about e-commerce strategies, trends, and innovations. Access our Braintrust and boost your brand's e-commerce potential.
Welcome to the Ecommerce Braintrust podcast. I'm Julie Spear, Head of Retail Marketplace Services at Acadia, alongside my co-host, Director of Retail Operations, also at Acadia, Jordan Ripley. Today, we have a frequent guest, friend of the pod, and all-around operations expert, Armin Alispahic, who is our team lead for retail operations here at Acadia. He's going to bring us up to speed on something that's a more recent phenomenon in the vendor space, and it's the availability of true channel P&L analysis. So a real edge of your seat episode here. We're going to be digging into P&Ls. Welcome to the podcast again, Armin.
Hey, Julie. Hey, Jordan. Thanks for having me again.
I make light of it, but I do love a good Google Sheet. I do love a good P&L. So I am excited to dig into this today.
Yeah, let's go.
We've all got our glasses on. We're ready to do the next. All right. So first, let's set a little bit of context. When we say things like vendor profitability on Amazon, that can mean a lot of different things to different people. And there's also a number of metrics that can come into play, whether we're talking net PPM or one of my favorites, crap. Can't realize profit. Can you walk through various metrics and views on profitability for vendors and kind of the nuance between them?
Yeah. So I feel like there are two main things people will think of when you say vendor profitability on Amazon. One is net PPM, and the other one is internal brand P&L. So net PPM stands for net pure profit margin, and is the main profitability metric that Amazon refers to when talking about vendors' bottom line performance. So on a product level, this is basically your average selling price minus cost price and any sales discounts. And on top of that, you add the vendor terms. So this is one of the main KPIs a vendor manager will actually be looking at when assessing a vendor account, as it determines the profitability of a vendor for Amazon. On the other hand, internal brand P&L can have different forms depending on how proficient and mature a brand is. Some mainly focus on cash flow and the sell-in with Amazon. Others have product level P&Ls and then only layer the vendor terms on top of that. And the biggest issue I'm seeing is that very few brands actually see the full picture, and many are unable to include some of the variable costs in their P&Ls because of the complexity of the Amazon platform itself. It's just they're not mature enough to understand everything there.
We'll get into a lot of those variable costs and how we started baking those in. But one thing when we were discussing this before, Armin, you had mentioned that those are the two sort of discrete profitability metrics. It's what is Amazon looking at? What is the vendor manager looking at? What is the brand side person hopefully looking at? But maybe not always. But you also said there's a sort of third under the water profitability metric with Amazon, where they're looking at fulfillment operations. Can you talk a little bit about that too? Because I think that distinction is missed.
So that one is, as you said, somewhat hidden because yes, Amazon will look at net PPM, but net PPM is just a symptom and, a KPI you can track over time to see how well you're doing. But the actual profitability has to include Amazon costs as well to serve the customer. So is your packaging optimized? How much is Amazon spending to actually ship? Can they package with other products? Is it, do they need to prep it into another box to ship to customers? So all of these things, Amazon has insights into internally. And then even though your maybe net PPM is looking healthy, if your product is bulky and Amazon is spending a lot on shipping to customer, that can make a huge difference and completely turn over the things and just make an item unprofitable for them.
And that goes Julie's favorite metric here of crap, but that net PPM is a sort of, as you said, symptomatic. It's a kind of leading indicator of where you might to start to see crap. But at the end of the day, it's Amazon's going to be looking at their all-in costs and decide what they can and can't sell. Is that fair to say?
Exactly. Yeah.
And this is interesting to me because there's it's been years now where it seems almost every software solution has offered some kind of P&L analysis on the seller side, right? And I think that's something, particularly for sellers, it was a lot of these were private label sellers or mom and pop shops. They're on the small seller side. It's like they needed to know, was this business making any money or not? And vendors, they had all sorts of large retail channels. And I feel like it was, less of a pressing urgency, but still something that's important. I think there's also a technical capability here that's underlying a lot of this, which is like the availability of data and software solutions that could even start to do this effectively. And I feel like we're starting to see that tip a little bit. I know a couple of the tools that we use are now starting to offer this natively. I'm just curious from your perspective, like what has allowed for this shift from only sellers being able to do this frequent P&L analysis to now vendors kind of joining that fold?
Yeah, so Vendor Central has always been kind of underdeveloped compared to Seller Central. We've internally hated its reporting for years, but in the last couple of years, Amazon has really made significant improvements, and one of those was also related to their API. I believe summer of 23 was when they rolled out a big change on the API integration capabilities, which allowed developers to actually create more sophisticated tools for VC specifically. And as you said, like we've spent a good deal of time enabling this for our own clients these last few months as our software provider introduced the feature. And I got to say, it's been a breath of fresh air to just have such level of detail in our reporting, as well as having it automated. Like as much as we love these, Julie, like, doing this automatically is much easier, versus the old process where we had to like do it in sheets and stuff.
What do you see as kind of the reason for this trend of focus being heavily bent on profitability versus just pure top line growth? What do you see as kind of the drivers for this focus, both from the brand side and from Amazon side in recent years?
I think the biggest need stems from the fact that Amazon has been squeezing vendor margins for years now. And we got to a point where vendors need to have full understanding of both their own P&L as well as what Amazon is seeing, so they can have informed conversations when negotiating with Amazon, or literally like drop the Amazon business as it's becoming unsustainable. Another trend I'm seeing is an increase in the amount of crap out items. I mean, it's nothing new, as Amazon has always flagged items where they can't realize a profit, and they made different punitive actions against such products, mainly focusing on advertising and eligibility. However, it feels like we're seeing more and more of these, probably a result of the ongoing margin compression. So from a business perspective, there is a need to understand item level performance from a profitability standpoint as well. And then from Amazon side, I think they benefit from brands being more aware of their product level P&L, because that also opens the door for discussion around supply chain optimization that Amazon cares so deeply about.
I think a lot of brands, this is my impression anyways, that like they would try to get as good of an understanding on this as possible when they would head into an AVN, right? Like you would try to understand, where can I wiggle a little bit on margin? Where can I optimize operationally? And that would drive the negotiations. But what you're saying is like the pressure has turned up both on Amazon's side and the brand side to have a really clear picture of that as you go into AVNs. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's like, I would say if the brand has all the data, Amazon obviously has all the data, Amazon can then elevate the conversations beyond like, just that, and say, okay, yes, these are all great, but your packaging sucks, or you need to like have you need to FFP and stuff like that. So
Yeah. That leads into the next thing I wanted to dive into, which is like really getting in the weeds here of, there's a lot of components that inform a vendor P&L, which I think is, again, as we discussed, one of the things that has delayed it, how common it is as an analysis tool. But obviously there's things from the media side, there's things on the promotion side, there's things on the operation side. Can you just kind of high level, now that we have these vendor P&Ls built out, like what are the things that we're having to actually incorporate and the brand should be thinking about in terms of the variable components that will ultimately inform bottom line profitability?
Yeah, so based on experience working with many vendor brands, typically they look at only their internal numbers. So, this is their COGS, and then add whatever vendor terms they have with Amazon on top of that. So things like co-op, damage allowance, freight, etc. And it's all great, but for the start only. A very common mistake I see is that all the variable costs like chargebacks and shortages are not accounted for, or they simply get lumped together. And also you have a siloed approach towards promo budgets and advertising, where you have different teams owning these numbers, and their decisions on allocations oftentimes are not informed at all by the profitability of the items. And the approach we developed and what our software enables us to see is item level insights into each of these costs. So it's very easy to see which items are actually profitable and which aren't. So we're basically able to see the fixed item costs, so your Amazon terms and brand's internal costs, if they provide those. And on top of that, we see isolated variable costs that can make or break an item P&L, basically. So we're able to answer questions like, has the item had any chargebacks or shortages? How much did we spend on promos? What's our advertising investment been? So it's actually very eye-opening. And of course, there's an aggregate view, so we can assess account level P&L as well.
That's interesting because even on the seller side, a lot of those fulfillment costs are hard to get to the product level, right? Like if I'm looking at inbound fulfillment or placement services or things like that, those are generally lump costs that are tricky to get down to a SKU level. Exactly. But you're saying something like shortages and chargebacks, by and large, we can allocate those down to the item level.
Exactly. So we'll know which products is contributing to those costs, and then the tool ties it to the item itself.
How are you seeing brands use the analysis at this level to kind of inform their business decisions? Are there any trends that you're picking up on?
Yeah, so it's still new, but I think it really has a potential to be a game changer for serious brands, at least, that are looking to scale their business profitably and have a long-term success mindset. So using these detailed profitability reports can really help inform crucial decisions around assortments vendors have with Amazon, as well as help them better plan future launches. So, this can be based on existing items that are successful, but brands can also base this on fixing structural defects on those less successful items and launch them after making the necessary improvements. Another huge benefit is being fully aware of how to optimally allocate your advertising and promotional dollars. So it's not only based on sales performance and volume, but actual item profitability and better skill potential. So I often say this, like, what good is your best-selling item if you only have 5 cents of profit per unit compared to some items that have much better profit margins, but you may have been seriously underinvesting because, of a somewhat slower sales volume.
I like the call out of this informing assortment selection and decisions on Amazon, because I think often, not every brand, but many brands over the past decade or so I've been in this, can take throw everything in the wall and see what sticks in terms of assortment that they list on Amazon. But digging into this level helps you see okay, it might be moving, but like you said, if you've got 5% margin on it, might not be worth it. So helping it inform assortment, I think, is a really important, I hope it's a trend that continues.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the sort of two forms of profitability at the start of the episode, like the sort of brand side profitability, which we're getting a better understanding as data availability and technology enables that. And then the Amazon profitability of primarily net PPM driven. Do you see a value of kind of correlating and comparing those at the item level over time? So I understand where do I have products where there's a larger variance or span between my margin and Amazon's margin, and where am I right up against it, and that product is going to have challenges over time? Is there some benefit in tracking those two together?
100%. That's actually what brands should be doing. Yes, I have my own numbers. Amazon has their own. Let's look at the data that kind of connects all of those things and make decisions from there. So very good point that you made is if a product is marginally profitable and things are just kind of heating up and then going to worse, that item probably either needs some form of improvement or next year, we are basically not having any money from it. So getting ahead of it as well is part of the process.
Are there other assortment decisions clearly coming into this? Are there other things that you feel like now that this data is more available and brands are hopefully looking at it more, things that it's okay, I expect this to change dramatically, whether it's operational capabilities or, the way they align advertising? Do you see any sort of big knock-on effects beyond assortment?
Yeah, so I want to believe that brands will start looking at how they allocate the advertising spend and promotional budgets. Just because, you have your bestseller and it's your kind of North Star of performance, this is your product you're proud of. But I don't know, not oftentimes, but there will be times when this product is actually not your profit driver. So maybe you're killing a lot of your assortment that's lower on your list because, like, you're not investing because there's no volume. But how can there be volume if you're not investing? So, like, kind of just knowing where to invest can have just like this great long-term success versus, let me just grow top line immediately, regardless of like, this product, because, the warehouse team, like, does their thing, like, marketing cares about this only, like, the siloed approach also affects that a lot.
Mm-hmm. Silos equal sadness. Quoting Scott Ashman there.
I think we have to pay Scott for each one of them.
All right. Well, Armin, as always, Armin.com. It was great having you on the show and to walk us through the details of P&L analysis. So thanks for joining us. And I know we'll have you back on again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.